And it's something that, whether it's major depression, minor depression, most people are going to, at some point in their life, go through it. Because there's so much variation of depression. There's not just one type of depression. Sometimes depression is biologically rooted. That the key of treatment is getting on medications and knowing that this is a chronic issue and it's something you're going to have to struggle with and learn how to live with for the rest of your life. And medications are effective, and getting therapy, even when it's more biological, is effective. But then there's depression, which is more of maybe fair to think of it as like a social disease, where we all experience all that day when we graduated high school, we graduated university, we're on top of the world. We accomplished something big, and then the day after, we're working at Starbucks. Where do I go now? My world made sense in the position I had at work. The world made sense at university. Where am I at now? Well, that's depression too. And so, first, being able to identify what sort of depression we're looking at here. Is this genetic? Is this more social, situational? And then figuring out a treatment that will be most effective, whether it's more a behavioral approach, rebuilding life, that feels good in a doing sort of way. From getting out of bed, getting a Coke, taking a walk around the block, building a schedule, that puts a life back together. Because what happens oftentimes with depression is there's one domino that's set off. Something happens, maybe there's a personal loss, maybe you got fired, maybe you even got promoted. And that one domino starts knocking down other dominoes, where every part of your life starts to fall apart. So behavioral approach can be really effective in putting back those dominoes, putting back into place the rest of life. And looking at depression that way is really kind of interesting because, well, in that sense, it's not what set off the depression, that's the problem, but everything else that got knocked down. So that's one approach. Or whether you want to use more of a cognitive approach, a CBT approach, where what you're doing is you're challenging these negative thoughts that are getting in the way of your life. And testing out, well, how accurate are those thoughts? And maybe, learning how to hold those thoughts in a less literal way, in a less serious way. That, okay, well, those thoughts can be there, but, well, they're not true, and let's see what happens if we pretend they're not true. Does life get better? And chances are it will get better. Or if using a psychodynamic approach is more useful, of maybe depression is a way of avoiding other feelings that you're having in life you need to get into touch with, that there's real challenges and real things that it feels, although this sounds a bit of a paradox, but it actually might in the short term feel better to be depressed than to realize that the relationship that you're in is not the relationship you thought you were going to be in. That maybe your spouse, that suspicion you're having that maybe they're not being faithful, maybe that's real, and facing that anger and facing that sadness and facing that fury and that shame, well, that's a lot to hold. Sometimes it is easier just to feel depressed and kind of vague in what the problem is in the short term. So no matter what approach one takes with depression, the main idea is trying to get more in touch with feelings, get more in touch with one's life, building a direction, getting back on track in that way, putting all those pieces together. And by doing that, the depression does go away.